Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. Fiction and not a fact. That's how Vice President Sara Duterte describes allegations she made grave threats against the first couple and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. Today's impeachment trial centered on the so-called Oplan Romanov, which the defense is using to justify Duterte's controversial remarks. What impact could these arguments have on the course of the proceedings? Let's get on point with House Lead Prosecutor, Congresswoman Gerville Luistro, who joins us live from the Senate. Congresswoman, good to have you again. Welcome to the show, and always thank you for your time, ma'am.
Good evening, Pinky, and good evening to all our viewers and followers.
Congresswoman Jinky, I was just watching the last minutes of what is happening in the Senate right now before we went on air, and maybe to apprise our viewers right now and myself. Attorney Lorna Capunan was actually saying that hindi na po ipepresent si Attorney Zulaika Lopez. Please tell us more about this.
That is correct, Pinky. At merong tatlong bagay na in-emphasize si Attorney Capunan, no? That includes to avoid redundancy, unnecessary, and repetition, no? So, surplusage, no? To correct. So, that is the reasons, or those are the reasons why we are doing away now with presenting subpoenaed witness Attorney Zulaika Lopez as well as Captain Bello, no? We believe na yung sasabihin ni Attorney Zulaika Lopez at ni Captain Bello ay na-cover na ng testimony ni Agent Calilong as well as Attorney Lotok, and as a matter of fact, they were even admitted by the Defense Counsel, no? So, ulitin ko, Pinky, yun, ha? The reasons are, they are unnecessary, they are surplusage, and they are redundancy. So, these are the reasons. And ultimately, we want to spare the court with wasting its time so that we can focus and dedicate the same to other witnesses who will be presented by the prosecution.
But that particular decision coming from the public and the private prosecutors, I'm sorry, apologies, ma'am, because I missed parts of it because I was also on air. Ang narinig ko po sinabi ni Attorney Capunan, nagkaroon po kayo ng, she used actually two words, huddle and hurdle. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Well, we've been observing the testimony of Agent Calilong as well as the testimony of Attorney Lotok, no? And ultimately, this afternoon, we were able to resolve with finality that if we will be presenting Attorney Zulaika as well as Captain Bello, it will be a repetition already of what was testified to by the first two witnesses. And that includes the admission of Attorney Villuan na paulit-ulit sinasabi kanina ni Attorney Capunan, no? Kasi there are only few things na kailangang sabihin sana nitong dalawang witnesses na to. And that includes nandun sila sa loob ng detention center and they personally witnessed the Vice President utter those words of threat against the President, the First Lady, and the former Speaker, no? And it appears to us, it was witnessed actually by the public, na na-cover ito ng testimony ng ating dalawang agents from NBI, and na-cover na rin siya repeatedly by the admissions of the defense during their cross-examination and even during recross-examination, no? So to ask Pinky, no, kung aming isasalang pa itong dalawang ito, it will be a waste of time of the court because it is actually a repetition already. Uulitin na lang ang na-cover na ng mga naunang testigo. Surplus age na siya or kalabisan sapagkat na-establish na yung gusto naming ma-establish from these two witnesses. And it will be a redundancy or unnecessary redundancy, paulit-ulit, unnecessary, hindi na kailangan, no? We would like to focus to other witnesses, other evidence na may ibang established aside from those na nasabi na ng dalawang naunang testigo.
I understand, of course, that a process like that is definitely up to the prosecution or even the defense when their turn comes. We had an interview a couple of weeks ago, ma'am, and sabi mo nga meron kayong I think now 57 witnesses. And at any given time, you're able to reduce, subtract any of the witnesses if necessary. And in fact, meron din yung tinatawag nga that I learned from you, yung reserved witness that you are given now. What we talked about then was 3 days, but hearing from the presiding officer, I think the agreement was 5 days. But when did you decide not to call as a hostile witness si Attorney Zuleika Lopez? I'm assuming it was just today, but specifically around what time, ma'am?
Well, just today, just after the conclusion of the testimony of Attorney Lotok. Although admittedly, since yesterday, we've been considering ang ganda na ng testimony ni Attorney Lotok. Halos kompleto na, but the final decision only came after the conclusion of the testimony of Attorney Lotok. To be specific, that was after recross examination, no? While admittedly, since kahapon, pinag-aaralan na talaga namin yan, and we became more convinced with his testimony today to dispense with the testimony of these two witnesses.
And there is no, was there any concern that because we understand that Attorney Zuleika Lopez would be a hostile witness, that it could possibly, just possibly be detrimental to the prosecution? Of course, I understand, ma'am, na pinaghandaan niyo to. Pero being a hostile witness, sabi nga ng interview kanina dito po sa BNC kay Corina at kay Willard, tricky po kasi din talaga ang hostile witness. Did it have anything to do with that?
We acknowledge that, Picky, but of course, kamukha ng sinabi mo kanina, it depends on the exigency of the trial, no? Naging observation namin na kompleto na yung gusto naming ma-establish from the testimony of the first two witnesses, and that is the ultimate reason why we are dispensing with the testimony of these two witnesses. And I wish to take note, hindi lang testimonya ni Attorney Zuleika ang dinidispense ng prosecution. It even includes our witness, Captain Bello, no? Dalawa sila na dinidispense na namin tonight, no? For the reason na na-establish na at magiging repetition na lang kung i-present pa sila.
For the benefit of those who do not know what the testimony of Captain Bello would be, please give us the explanation. Ano ho bang ite-testify ni Captain Bello?
Well, Captain Bello was the LSB official of the House of Representatives, no? Who served the transfer order to Attorney Zuleika Lopez, no? Nung ililipat sana siya sa hospital while the Vice President was inside the detention center, no? She's supposed to tell the court na nakita niya nandun ang Vice President at nakita din niya si Attorney Zuleika Lopez. These are the circumstances surrounding the video conferencing where the Vice President uttered the words of threat against the President, the First Lady, and the former Speaker.
Congresswoman Jinky, so who's next? What happens now tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow, I understand na nakaschedule ang oral argument. This is about the preterm evidence or documents pertaining to AMLAC, BIR, and even the bank documents, no? The issue here is whether or not those documents which pertain to acts or omissions prior to 2022, when the respondent became an impeachable official, are relevant to this impeachment trial.
Ibig sabihin ho ba na magkakaroon ng oral arguments ang magkabilang kampo para patunayan na kailangan o hindi dapat isama yung mga records ng mga bangko ni Vice President bago po siya maging Vice Presidente. Did I understand that right, ma'am?
That is correct, Pinky, no? But it does not pertain only to the bank documents. It pertains as well to SALN.
Right.
It pertains also to BIR documents, the ITR, no? And the AMLAC documents, no? So ang issue dito, you are correct when you said, no? Kompletohin lang natin yung documents which are concerned in this particular issue. Kung ito bang mga dokumentong ito which are prior to 2022 when the respondent became an impeachable official are relevant in this impeachment trial, no? Of course, the position of the prosecution is they are relevant.
And with that oral argument coming from both the prosecution and the defense, what happens after? Is that going to be a decision that will be put forward to the senator judges to vote upon if indeed pwedeng isama o hindi?
Well, actually, before I came here, no, the senator judges were discussing whether they will be voting tomorrow immediately after the oral argument, or they will be given additional time to be able to make their position on the matter. And the last thing I heard from Senator Judge Alan Cayetano is like he's requesting for a caucus, no, about the subject matter to be debated upon tomorrow by the prosecution and the defense.
Fair enough, because you had to go to our live point to be able to speak to us tonight. So we thank you for that. So tomorrow is actually going to be also, not that the other days were less important, but this is a shift now, because are you saying na tapos na po ang issue on grave threats?
Well, we still have one witness, no? And I don't know if there will be additional witnesses pa after this one. The last witness I'm pertaining to as of now is Attorney Melvin Matibag, our NBI director, no? I understand that we have reservations, so we haven't discussed whether Attorney Melvin will be the last or whether there will be additional witnesses pa, anchored under the reservation to present additional witnesses or evidence in support of the threat article.
Just to understand it before we go on a break, ma'am, so bakit po bukas yung oral arguments on the can you include AMLAC, BIR, and other pertinent documents prior to the assumption of Sara Duterte as Vice President? Why are we jumping?
What I understand, why the reason, Pinky, is we have pending motion for issuance of subpoena. We have pending request for issuance of subpoena of these documents, including those prior to 2022. No? Itong documents na to, that includes bank documents, that includes the AMLAC documents, that includes the BIR documents. No? Parang hindi naman kasama yung SALN. Parang we have them already. No? So for these three documents, they include those prior to 2022, and that is why I believe the impeachment court deemed it proper to set the oral argument tomorrow before they decide on the request of the prosecution for the issuance of this subpoena.
We'll be taking a very short break. We'll continue our discussion with Congresswoman Gerville Luistro when we return. Stay tuned. This is On Point. Welcome back. Still with us, House Lead Prosecutor Congresswoman Gerville Luistro. Congresswoman, so sino pong mag-opening statement for the prosecution bukas?
It will be Congressman Chel Jokno. Of course, we understand. He has been with the academe for so long. He has been a seasoned litigation lawyer, no? As a matter of fact, decano siya, Dean of the College of Law, before he was elected as member of the House of Representatives. So we are very much confident and positive about his engagement to represent the prosecution in this debate regarding the relevancy of the documents prior to 2022 in this impeachment trial.
Let me ask you this, Congresswoman. What kind of an effect would a possible vote by the senator judges, if it comes to that nga, tungkol po dito sa pertinent documents, that they decide that prior to 2022 is unnecessary, which means, I guess that would be a not a loss, but I mean, you wouldn't call that victorious on your end, hindi ho ba? Kasi gusto nyo isama yung prior to 2022. Malaking epekto ho ba yan sa pagsusuri o sa debate or proving the point of unexplained wealth kung hindi po masama yung prior to 2022?
Without dwelling on the merits, no, Pinky, and without reference to this particular impeachment trial, but by allowing the documents pertaining to acts or omissions prior to the time when the public official became an impeachable official will provide a clear picture of what happened. And by clear picture, it will provide the source, it will provide retention, ownership, control, no, and accumulation. As a matter of fact, without reference to this particular impeachment trial, if it is proven that what was acquired as ill-gotten prior to becoming an impeachable official is still retained by the public official, then there is a continuing violation of the law. At the very least, RA 3019 or perhaps the Plunder Law, or even 6713, the law pertaining to the ethical standards of public officials and employees, no? And I wish to point out as well that with respect to the constitutional provision on accountability, particularly Section 2 of Article 11, ang binanggit lang naman doon, who are the impeachable officials? Ang binanggit din lang doon, what are the grounds for impeachment? But the Constitution never provide with respect to the timeline regarding the date of commission, omission or commission of act that constitutes an impeachable offense, no? Sabi sa Section 2, Article 11, the impeachable officials are as follows: President, Vice President, members of the Constitutional Commission, and then the justices of the Supreme Court, the Ombudsman, no? And then they made mention also about the grounds. Kasama dun yung mga culpable violation of the Constitution: treason, bribery, graft and corruption, betrayal of public trust, and other high crimes. But nowhere will you see the timeline as to the commission of the act, as to whether it should be committed prior to or during the time that the public official is an impeachable official. Walang binanggit ang Constitution doon, no? And that is very clear. That is without specific reference to the subject matter of this impeachment trial.
I actually remember two things after you said that. I understand that you weren't referencing it to the issue now. So let me reference it to the impeachment proceedings, trials in the past. During the Corona impeachment trial, I do need to research on this, just to be very frank, and look back again. But were there references prior to the Chief Justice on his SAL-N that were used before he became Chief Justice? Number two, also with former President Joseph Estrada, were there also references used that the court admitted prior to him becoming president?
Yeah, that is correct. Meron. As a matter of fact, we can invoke legislative precedents, no? Sapagkat merong mga incidents na pinag-usapan during the trial which are prior to becoming the impeachable official. We can include, as a matter of fact, Pinky, yung kaso ni Justice Sereno naman, where the basis for the grant of a co-warrant of proceeding ay yung failure niya na i-disclose yung kanyang salary as a UP professor, which was during the time, long before she became a member of the Supreme Court, right? No? So, ang point doon, without, again, particular reference to this impeachment trial, no? Kung yung prior conduct ay ginagamit as basis of disqualification, just like what happened to Justice Sereno, then it must be considered as well in removing impeachable public official.
And siguro para mabalikan lang yung kay Justice Sereno, Congresswoman, hindi po kasi natuloy yung impeachment proceedings laban sa kanya.
I understand.
Hindi po ba? Well, just
I understand.
making it clear, except yung, of course, ang natuloy po yung kay Chief Justice Corona rather, and former President Joseph Estrada. I mean, it's you know, we have to look back at all the impeachment proceedings that happened in the past. So, Now that will be the case, it will be still up to the senator judges to decide on this. Now, I want to go back to some of the highlights of what happened today, which is really part of my questioning. Dahil nagulat din po ako, I was surprised with the turn of events towards the last part of the impeachment day. Anong araw na ho ba to? 1, 2, 3, day 5. All right. Ma'am, ang sinabi niyo po kanina, maganda na po kasi yung testimony ni Attorney Lotoc at ni Senior Agent Calilong. Now,
Perhaps hindi lang siguro maganda kung hindi kompleto na.
Kompleto.
And the supposed offer of testimony for Attorney Zulaika and Captain Bello were served already in the testimony of Agent Calilong and Attorney Lotoc.
okay. Having said that, ma'am, yung pong kanina, some of the points that I wrote down, yung tinanong po kasi itong grave threats, because of course ito naman po yung pinag-uusapan the past days. Attorney Binluan, when asked, said the defense was saying it wasn't a threat in the first place. Ang sabi po niya, it was a mere response to a Q&A, and it was never aimed directly to BBM, the First Lady, and the former speaker. Yun po yung kanyang sinabi. I forget who asked that question. Could have been Senator Judge Pia Cayetano. But do you remember that, ma'am?
Yeah, but our position has always been res ipsa loquitur, no? I do not want to dwell really too much on the merits of the case, but ever since ang position ng prosecution dyan is res ipsa loquitur, and those utterances constitute an impeachable offense.
Can we talk about, though, are you allowed, please forgive me if you are not allowed, are you allowed to even comment on some of the seeming flaws that the defense were highlighting during the questioning, the cross-examination po kay Attorney Binluan, yung pong mga typographical errors and even the mismatch of the dates?
I don't know really how my fellow prosecutors are addressing the questions, no? But under the sub judice rule, and we were reminded as well by the presiding officer during the first day of the trial, we're not supposed to comment on the
Okay.
on the merits of this impeachment trial, no? And that is why I've been very, very restrictive in providing
I
answers
understand.
to your questions, no?
Opo.
But nevertheless, about the inconsistencies, discrepancies, without again specific reference to the subject matter of this impeachment trial, as to whether it will affect the theory of our case, it depends if it is significant or not. Our position is they are not significant.
It was also Attorney Lotoc who said that the grave threats were real and actual. I think that's what he said yesterday. All right. So it's day 5. Bukas po ay day 6. Equally, I'm sure interesting, especially because of this oral argument on documents, BIR files, etc. Last question, ma'am. What happens to that BIR box? Does that mean that if the vote becomes favorable to the prosecution, does it necessarily mean that the BIR box can be opened?
Okay, so to update the viewing public, no, the BIR box was returned already by the impeachment court to the BIR, no? But I wish to share as well that part of the request for issuance of subpoena is an expanded list for BIR documents, no? And that is supposed to include what we believe are inside this BIR box, no? So we hope that we will be able to get the favorable judgment of the impeachment court with respect to the debate which will happen tomorrow, because doon nakasalalay yung completeness ng mga documents na nire-request ng prosecution on this request for issuance of subpoena. Kasama doon yung expanded list ng BIR documents, not only those which we believe are inside the box, but even the other documents of the BIR which we believe are pertinent as well in this impeachment trial.
And just to last question, ma'am. I saw you yesterday together with some of the House prosecutors and even, of course, the defense. How are you guys? Are you in high spirits? Pagod ho ba kayo? Kamusta ho kayo ang prosecutor, public and private?
The prosecutors are always in high spirit, both the public and the private prosecutors, no? We believe in the nobility of what we are doing. We believe that this is for the Filipino people. We understand that this is a constitutional duty, no? And yes, we are always in high spirit, and we're positive that we will be able to present all the evidence necessary to support the 4 articles of impeachment.
And we'll see you again tomorrow. Maraming salamat. House Lead Prosecutor, Congresswoman Gerville Luistro. Thank you po.
Thank you, Pinky, and thank you to all the viewers and followers.
And that's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.